couple senators there on the floor, including Senator John Cornyn, who voted in favor of the debt ceiling bill earlier today. The Senate today approving two bills, one that allows the Treasury Department to continue borrowing money, ensuring the federal government does not default on its more than $17 trillion debt for another year. That suspension of the debt ceiling will last through mid-March 2015. The Senate also approving today the House-passed bill to restore certain military retiree benefits. At one point, House GOP leadership had thought of tying those two together, but both chambers have now passed separate bills, and they go to President Obama.
Majority Leader.
It's my understanding that the Senate is a quorum call.
Senator's correct.
I would ask unanimous consent that that be terminated.
Without objection.
I ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to executive session to consider nominations calendar number 564, 570, 566, and 567. These are District Court judges for Connecticut, Eastern District of Arkansas, Northern District of California, and the Northern District of California. The nominations be confirmed on block. The motion be considered made and laid on the table with no intervening action or debate, and no further motions being ordered to any of the nominations. Any related statements be printed in the record, and that President be immediately notified. Since action, the Senate then resume legislative session.
Is there objection?
Mr. President.
Republican whip.
Mr. President, reserving the right to object. As everyone knows, last year our friends on the other side of the aisle invoked the so-called nuclear option. The stated reason was to strip the minority of any ability to stop any executive or judicial nominees on the floor. But in fact, prior to the President's attempt to fill up the D.C. Circuit Court with judges they didn't need, the Senate actually had a very good record of confirming the President's judicial nominees, 215 to 2. 215 to 2. Now the Majority Leader would like to short-circuit the process that was put in place as a result of the nuclear option and seek to get confirmation of these judicial nominees by unanimous consent. My hope would be that the Majority Leader would choose to reverse the partisan rules change so that we can go back to the bipartisan cooperative process that resulted in more than 200 Obama judges being confirmed. Absent that, I object.
Objection is heard.
Mr. President,
Majority
I
Leader.
appreciate my friend's understanding of what has happened, and we'll have further conversations about this. I would move to proceed to executive session to consider calendar number 564.
Questions on the motion to proceed? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. Motion is agreed to. Clerk will report the nomination.
Jeffrey Meyer of Connecticut to be United States District Judge.
I would now ask the clerk to report with permission of the chair a cloture motion which I have filed.
Clerk will report the cloture motion.
Cloture motion. We, the undersigned senators, in accordance with the provisions of Rule 22 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, hereby move to bring to a close the debate on the nomination of Jeffrey Meyer of Connecticut to be United States District Judge for the District of Connecticut, signed by 19 senators as follows. Reed of
I
Nevada.
ask unanimous consent, Mr. President, the reading of the names be waived.
Without objection.
I ask consent that the mandatory quorum under Rule 22 be waived.
Without objection.
I move to proceed to legislative session, Mr. President.
Questions on the motion to proceed? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Ayes appears to have it. The ayes have it.
I now,
Motion is agreed to.
thank you, Mr. President. I now move to proceed to executive session to consider calendar number 570.
Question is on the motion to proceed. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Ayes appears to have it. The ayes do have it. The motion is agreed to. Clerk will report the nomination.
Nomination. James Maxwell Moody, Jr. of Arkansas to be United States District Judge.
I have a cloture motion that has been filed at the desk.
Clerk will report the cloture motion.
Cloture motion. We, the undersigned senators, in accordance with the provisions of Rule 22 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, hereby move to bring to a close the debate on the nomination of James Maxwell Moody, Jr. of Arkansas to be United States District Judge for the Eastern District of Arkansas, signed by 18 senators as follows.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent the reading of the names not be necessary.
Without objection.
I ask consent that the mandatory quorum under Rule 22 be waived.
Without objection.
I now move to proceed to legislative session.
Questions on the motion to proceed? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The ayes appears to have it. The ayes do have it. The motion is agreed to.
I now move to proceed to executive session to consider calendar number 566.
The question is on the motion to proceed.
Questions on the motion to proceed? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. Motion is agreed to, and the clerk will report the nomination.
Nomination. James Donato of California to be United States District Judge.
I send a cloture motion to the desk.
The clerk will report the cloture motion.
Cloture motion. We, the undersigned senators, in accordance with the provisions of Rule 22 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, hereby move to bring to a close debate on the nomination of James Donato of California to be United States District Judge for the Northern District of California, signed by 18 senators as follows.
I ask unanimous consent, Mr. President, the reading of the names be waived.
Without objection.
I ask unanimous consent that mandatory quorum under Rule 22 be waived.
Without objection.
I now move to proceed to legislative session.
Questions on the motion to proceed? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Motion is agreed to.
I now move to proceed to executive session and consider calendar number 567.
Question is on the motion to proceed. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. Motion is agreed to.
I ask that there...
Clerk will report the nomination.
Oh, thank you, Mr. President. I got
Nomination, Beth Labson Freeman of California to be United States District Judge.
I ask the chair to reported a cloture motion which I filed.
Clerk will report the cloture motion.
Cloture motion. We, the undersigned senators, in accordance with provisions of Rule 22 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, hereby move to bring to a close debate on the nomination of Beth Labson Freeman of California to be United States District Judge for the Northern District of California, signed by 18 senators as follows.
I ask consent the mandatory quorum under Rule 22 be waived.
Without objection.
I now move to proceed to legislative session.
Questions on the motion proceed. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. Motion is agreed to.
Is a motion to proceed to calendar number 301S 1982 now pending?
The senator's correct. Motion is pending.
I have a motion in regard to that measure. I wish the chair would order to be reported.
Clerk will report the cloture motion.
Cloture motion. We, the undersigned senators, in accordance with provisions of Rule 22 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, hereby move to bring to a close the debate on the motion to proceed to calendar number 301 S 1982, the Comprehensive Veterans Health Benefits and Military Retirement Pay Restoration Act, signed by 17 senators as follows. Reid of Nevada.
Mr. President, I would ask unanimous consent to read
Without
it.
objection.
It shall not be necessary. I ask unanimous consent the mandatory quorum under Rule 22 be waived and that cloture vote on the motion to proceed occur following the disposition of the Freeman nomination and the resumption of legislative session.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I note the absence of quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Alexander.
Want to let you know what's happening in our primetime schedule across the C-SPAN networks. Tonight at 8 Eastern on C-SPAN, President Obama signs an executive order raising the minimum wage for government contractors. Here on C-SPAN 2, the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee meets about transportation infrastructure. And on C-SPAN 3, a hearing on extreme weather events. Here's a little bit more about that. The Wall Street Journal writes that as another fierce winter storm swept through the southeast and was set to engulf the nation's capital, the Senate Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs held a hearing this morning to discuss how to better prepare the nation for extreme weather events. In his opening statement, the committee's chairman, Senator Tom Carper of Delaware, said extreme weather has become the new norm, adding events like Superstorm Sandy, recent wildfires, dangerous tornadoes, and historic droughts may well just be the tip of the iceberg of what's to come. Again, that hearing will be on C-SPAN 3 tonight, starting in about 2 hours from now at 8 Eastern. Earlier today, over at the White House, President Obama signed an executive order to raise the minimum wage from $7.25 to $10.10 an hour for all future government contracts beginning next year. While we wait for a senator to speak, we'll show you his remarks today at the signing ceremony.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
Hello, everybody. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Everybody have a seat. Have a seat. Well, welcome to the White House, everybody. I know you had to come here before you go buy some shovels and some salt. It sounds like we may get a little snow, but I very much appreciate everybody being here. I want to thank, first and foremost, the workers who are with me here this afternoon. And I want to thank two champions for all hard-working Americans. We've got Secretary of Labor Tom Perez, who's in the house. Where's Tom? Right here. Tom's right here. I didn't know where he was. And we've got outstanding congressman who's used to snow because he's from Minnesota, Congressman Keith Ellison. Now, it's been just over 2 weeks since I delivered my State of the Union address. And I said this year would be a year of action, and I meant it. Over the past 14 days, I've ordered an across-the-board reform of our job training programs to train folks with the skills that employers need and then match them up with good jobs that are ready to be filled right now. I've directed the Treasury to create something we're calling MyRA, sort of like an IRA, but it's MyRA. And that's a new way for Americans to start saving for retirement. And you can start with as little as $25, $50 and start building up a little bit of a nest egg and get tax benefits for doing so. You know, we've rallied the leaders of some of America's biggest high-tech companies to help us make sure that all of our kids have access to high-speed internet and up-to-date technology in their classrooms so that they're learning the skills that they need for the new economy. We brought together business leaders who are committed to hiring more unemployed Americans, particularly long-term unemployed, who oftentimes are discriminated against. You know, they're in a catch-22. They haven't had a job for a while, and then the employer's not willing to look at their resume because they haven't had their job for a while. So the point is, I'm eager to work with Congress whenever I can find opportunities to expand opportunity for more families. But wherever I can act on my own without Congress, by using my pen to take executive actions or picking up the phone and rallying folks around a common cause, that's what I'm going to do. And so that brings me to the issue we're going to talk about today. After the worst economic crisis in generations, our economy has been growing for the past 4 years. And our businesses have created 8.5 million new jobs. Unemployment rate has come down. But while those at the top are doing better than ever, corporate profits have been high, the stock market has been high, average wages have barely budged. So you've got too many Americans who are working harder than ever before just to get by, but they can't seem to get ahead. Can't seem to make all the ends meet. And that's been true since long before the recession hit. We've got to reverse those trends. We've got to build an economy that works for everybody, not just the fortunate few. And we've got to restore opportunity for everybody so that no matter who you are, no matter how you started out, no matter what you look like, no matter what your last name is, you can get ahead in America if you're willing to work hard and take responsibility for your life. Right? So the opportunity agenda I've laid out is going to help us do just that. Part one of this agenda is more new jobs that pay a good wage, jobs in manufacturing and exports and energy and innovation. Part two, we've got to train the folks with the skills to fill those jobs. Part three, we've got to make sure every child gets a world-class education. And part four, we've got to make sure that the economy rewards hard work for every American. Making hard work pay off with economic security and decent wages and benefits is what we're about here today. It means making sure women earn equal pay for equal work. It means making sure workers have the chance to save for a dignified retirement. It means access to affordable health insurance that gives you the freedom to change jobs or be your own boss, and the peace of mind that it'll be there for you when you get sick and you need it most. So if you know anybody who doesn't have health insurance right now, send them to healthcare.gov. Website's working. Sign them up. You can get health care for less than your cell phone bill for a lot of folks. But it also means that in the wealthiest nation on earth, nobody who works full-time should have to live in poverty. Nobody. Not here in America. Now, it was 1 year ago today, that I first asked Congress to raise the federal minimum wage. A federal minimum wage that in real terms is worth about 20% less than it was when Ronald Reagan took office. 20% less, a fifth less. So this afternoon I've invited some of the folks who would see a raise if we raise that federal minimum wage. They happen to join me here at the White House. And like most workers in their situation, they're not teenagers. They look like teenagers. Some of them are very young looking. But they're not teenagers taking on their first job. They're adults. Average age is 35 years old. A majority of lower wage jobs are held by women. Many of them have children that they're supporting. These are Americans who work full-time, often to support a family, and if the minimum wage had kept pace with our economic productivity, they'd already be getting paid well over $10 an hour. Instead, the minimum wage is still just $7.25. And when Congress refuses to raise it, it loses value because there's a little bit of inflation. Everything else starts costing a little bit more, even though inflation's been pretty low. It's still costing a little bit more each year. That means each dollar isn't going as far, and they've got a little bit less. So over the past year, the failure of Congress to act was the equivalent of a $200 pay cut for these folks. For a typical minimum wage worker, that's a month worth of groceries, maybe 2 months worth of electricity. It makes a big difference for a lot of families. Now, the good news is that in the year since I first asked Congress to raise the minimum wage, 6 states went ahead and passed laws to raise theirs. We appreciate that. You got more states and cities and counties that are taking steps to raise their minimum wage as we speak. And, you know, a lot of companies are doing it too. not out of charity, but because they've discovered it's good business. 2 weeks ago, I visited a Costco store in Maryland. Now, Costco is a very profitable company. Its stock has done great. It's expanded all over the place. But their philosophy is higher wages are a smart way to boost productivity and reduce turnover. If employees are happy and feel like the company is invested in them, then they're going to do more for the company. They're going to go above and beyond. And you know, when I was over at the Costco store, I was meeting folks who had started off as at the cash register, and you know, now were in supervisory positions and had been there for 20 years, and you could see the kind of pride that they had in the company because the company cared about them. I even received a letter the next day from a woman who saw my visit on TV. She decided to apply a job for Costco. She said, well, let me apply for a job at Costco. They look like they do a good job. So across the country, owners of small and large businesses are recognizing that fair wages and higher profits go hand in hand. It's good for the bottom line. And as America's chief executive, I agree. So while Congress decides what it's going to do, and I hope this year, and I'm going to work this year and urge this year that they actually pass a law, today I'm going to do what I can to help raise working Americans' wages. So today, I'm issuing an executive order requiring federal contractors to pay their employees a fair wage of at least $10.10 an hour. $10.10 an hour. This will make a difference for folks. Right now, there's a dishwasher at Randolph Air Force Base in Texas making $7.76 an hour. $7.76 an hour. There's a fast food worker at Andrews right down the street making $8.91 an hour. There's a laundry worker at Camp Dodge in Iowa making $9.03 an hour. Once I sign this order, starting next year, as their contracts come up, each of them and many of their fellow co-workers are going to get a raise. And by the way, that includes folks who get paid in tips. They'll get a raise too. The tip wage has gone up even slower than the regular minimum wage. So just as it's good for companies across the country, this will be good for America's bottom line, for contractors and for taxpayers. The opponents of the minimum wage have been using the same arguments for years, and time and again they've been proven wrong. Raising the minimum wage is good for business, and it's good for workers, and it's good for the economy. Puts more money in these folks' pockets, that means they got some money to go shop, which in turn means the business has more customers, which means they may hire more workers and make more of a profit. And let's not forget, not only is it good for the economy, it's the right thing to do. There's a simple moral principle at stake. If you take responsibility and you work as hard as these folks work, if you work full time, you shouldn't be living in poverty. Not in America. We believe that. And this executive order will cover Americans with disabilities, because this principle doesn't just apply to some of us, it applies to all of us. So, I'm going to keep doing whatever I can to raise working Americans' wages. And I would ask any business leader out there, any governor, any mayor, any local leader listening, do what you can to raise your employees' wages, to work to raise the wages of citizens in your jurisdiction. They'll support these efforts. A majority of Americans, not just Democrats, not just independents, but Republicans, too, support raising the minimum wage. It's the right thing to do. So that's something Congress should keep in mind this year. There's a bill right now in front of both the House and the Senate that would boost America's minimum wage to $10.10 an hour, just like I'm doing with this executive action. It's easy to remember. 10-10. 10-10. Let's get that done. Raise the federal minimum wage to 10-10 wouldn't just raise wages for minimum wage workers. Its effect would lift wages for about 28 million Americans. It would lift millions of Americans out of poverty immediately. It would help millions more work their way out of poverty without requiring a single dollar in new taxes or spending. It's the right thing to do. Just last month, 600 economists, including 7 Nobel Prize winners, wrote the leaders of houses of Congress to remind them that the bill before Congress would have little or no negative effect on hiring, on jobs. So it's not going to depress the economy, it'll boost the economy. Yes. It will give more businesses, more customers with more money to spend. It'll grow the economy for everybody. So, yeah. He's excited about it. So members of Congress have a pretty clear choice to make right now. Raise our workers' wages, grow our economy, or let wages stagnate further and give workers what amounts to another pay cut this year. Restore unemployment insurance for Americans still looking for that job, or expose them further to hardship. Members of Congress, you can help people make progress in their own lives, or you can hinder that progress. And every American deserves to know where your elected representative stands on this issue. So ask your senator, ask your representative in the House, do you support raising the federal minimum wage to $10.10 an hour? If they say yes, tell them, good job. You know, they don't hear that often. So give them a pat on the back, give them a hug, let them know, way to go. That's the right thing to do. If they say no, you know, be polite. I mean, don't just yell at them, but say, well, why not? Ask them to reconsider siding with an overwhelming majority of Americans. Encourage them to say yes. Give America a raise. So I'm about to sign this executive order. When you hear me talking about my pen and my phone to make a difference for middle-class Americans and those working to get into the middle class, this is exactly what I mean. I'm going to do what I can. Congress should do what it needs to do. I will not give up on this fight no matter how long it takes. America deserves a raise. Working families deserve to know some more economic security in their own lives. We've got to create new jobs, strengthen the middle class, build new ladders of opportunity for folks working their way into the middle class, just like these folks are doing right here. There are millions of Americans who could just use a little bit of boost. Millions of Americans outside of Washington who are tired of the old, stale political arguments, or tired of folks just looking out for people who can afford big lobbyists and big campaign contributions. There are folks out there who want to see us restore an economy that works for everybody and get back to our founding vision of opportunity for all. So I know you guys will work with me, but go out there and organize some more. Thank you, everybody. Let's give Americans a raise right now. I'm going to sign this.
Among other legislative work today, the Senate passed a bill suspending the debt ceiling through March 2015. We talk with a Capitol Hill reporter about that. Caitlin Huey-Burns, the congressional reporter with RealClearPolitics.com, joining us. You write that after a dramatic vote in the U.S. Senate, a clean bill to lift the debt ceiling for a year is now headed to President Obama's desk. What made it dramatic?
Well, what made it dramatic was we knew that eventually the bill would probably pass, but in the Senate, unlike the House, there are procedural hurdles requiring a 60-vote threshold to move to final passage. And sometimes they can work out a deal where it just requires a majority vote, but Ted Cruz, a Republican in the Senate, voiced against using that threshold, moving for a 60 vote to move on the bill, and that would require at least 5 Republican senators to put their necks out on the line on a bill that's really politically hurtful to them. So it was dramatic in a way that we didn't know how many and which senators on the Republican side would vote to move forward with this bill. And what was most surprising to us was that Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, who is in a re-election fight and facing a primary challenge, was one of those who voted to proceed with this bill. He, of course, is the leader of the Republicans in the Senate, and John Boehner, the House Speaker, earlier this week did the same thing.
What did GOP leadership do to get the votes needed to pass?
Well, they talked about it during their conference meeting earlier today on the Senate side. And basically, McConnell and a couple other Republican leaders and Republican senators decided to voice support for moving forward with the bill, which, gave the over the 60-vote majority threshold that they needed. So the vote on the cloture motion was 67 votes, 12 Republicans voting to proceed. The final passage was on party lines, all Democrats voting to support raising the debt ceiling, all Republicans voting against it.
You sent a tweet out saying that
standing... consent to call the quorum be vitiated.
Without objection.
As unanimous consent, the Senate now proceed to pre-morning business. Senators permitted to speak for up to 10 minutes each.
Without objection.
As unanimous consent, the Senate proceed to executive session to consider nominations 597, 598, 601, 602, 603, with the exception of Colonel Martin Baird and Colonel Robert Stanley II, and 604, 605 with the exception of Colonel Andrew E. Salas, S-A-L-A-S, 606 with the exception of Brigadier General John K. Kelk, K-E-L-K, and then 607, 608, 609, 610, 611, and all nominations on the Secretary's desk in the Air Force and Army, that the nomination be confirmed and blocked. The motion to reconsider be considered made and laid on the table. There be no intervening action or debate, that no further nomination be in order to any of the nominations, and any related statements be printed in the record, that President Obama be immediately notified of the Senate's action, and the Senate then resume legislative session.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that time be determined by me, with the concurrence of Senator McConnell, the Senate proceed to executive session to consider calendar number 561, that there be 20 minutes for debate, equally divided in the usual form, that upon the use reading back of that time, the Senate proceed to vote with no intervening action or debate on the nomination. The motion to reconsider be considered made and laid on the table with no intervening action or debate, that no further motions be in order. Any related statements be printed in the record, and the President be immediately notified of the Senate's action. The Senate then resume legislative session.
Without objection.
I ask unanimous consent the Senate proceed to calendar number 248.
Clerk will report.
Calendar number 248, S-1254, a bill to amend the Harmful Algal Blooms and Hypoxia Research and Control Act of 1998 and for other purposes.
Is there objection to proceeding to the measure? Without objection.
Mr. President, I ask the Nelson amendment, which the desk be agreed to as amended, to be read a third time passed. Motion reconsider be considered made and laid on the table with no intervening action or debate.
Without objection.
I ask unanimous consent the Senate proceed to H. Con. Res. 81 and H. Con. Res. 82. And
Clerk will report.
H. Con. Res. 81, providing a correction in the enrollment of S25. H. Con. Res. 82, providing a correction in the enrollment of S540.
Is there objection in proceeding to the measure? Without objection.
I ask unanimous consent the resolution be agreed to and block, that the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid on the table with no any action or debate.
Without objection.
I ask consent the Judiciary Committee be discharged from further consideration of S-Res 350.
Clerk will report.
S-Res 350, designating February 14, 2014 as National Solidarity Day for Compassionate Patient Care.
Is there objection? Without objection, the committee is discharged and the Senate will proceed to the measure.
I ask unanimous consent the Booker Amendment to the resolution which has to be agreed to. The resolution is amended to be agreed to. The Booker Amendment to the preamble which has to be agreed to. The preamble is amended to be agreed to. And the motion reconsider be considered made and laid on the table with no any action or debate.
Without objection.
I ask consent the Senate proceed to S-Res 358.
Clerk will report.
S-Res 358, commending the Seattle Seahawks for winning Super Bowl 48 and the 12th man for their critical support.
Is there objection to proceeding to the measure? Without objection.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent the resolution be agreed to, the preamble be agreed to, and the motion reconsider be considered made and laid on the table with no any action or debate.
Without objection.
I ask unanimous consent the Senate proceed to S-Res 359.
Clerk will report.
S-Res 359, to constitute the majority party's membership on certain committees for the 113th Congress or until their successors are chosen.
Is there objection to proceeding to the measure? Without objection.
I ask unanimous consent the resolution be agreed to, and motion reconsider be laid on the table with no any action or debate.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I'm told there's a bill at the desk due for its first reading.
Clerk will read the title of the bill for the first time.
S 2024, a bill to amend Chapter 1 of Title I, United States Code, with regard to the definition of marriage and spouse for federal purposes and to ensure respect for state regulation of marriage.
I ask for a second reading, and the purpose of this is to place the bill on the calendar of the provisions of Rule 14, but now I object to my own request.
Objection having been heard, the bill will be read for a second time on the next legislative day.
I ask unanimous consent that Senator Sanders be appointed as conferee to H.R. 3080, the Water Resources Reform and Development Act.
Without objection.
I ask unanimous consent that during the adjournment or recess of the Senate from Thursday, February 13th through Monday, February 24th, Majority Leader, Senators Warner and Levin be authorized to sign duly enrolled bills or joint resolutions.
Without objection.
I ask unanimous consent that notwithstanding the upcoming recess or adjournment of the Senate, the President of the Senate, the President pro tempore, and the majority and minority leaders be authorized to make appointments to commissions, committees, boards, conferences, or interparliamentary conferences authorized by law by concurrent action of the two houses or by order of the Senate.
Without objection.
I ask unanimous consent that the appointment of the desk be that it appears separately in the record as if made by the chair.
Without objection.
I ask unanimous consent that Major Leslie L. Samaro, a United States Air Force officer, who is currently serving as my defense legislative fellow this year, be granted floor privileges for the duration of S. 1982, the Veterans Comprehensive Bill.
Without objection.
When the Senate returns, it will address, Mr. President, a number of important nominations: the Senator's Comprehensive Veterans Bill, extension of employment insurance benefits, sexual assault in the military, and other important matters. On unemployment insurance, I want to be very clear, Mr. President. This issue is not going to go away. We're one Republican vote away from restoring this lifeline. 1.7 million Americans, including 22,000 Nevadans, depend on this lifeline, and we're not going to let them down. I ask unanimous consent that when the Senate completes the business day, it adjourn and convene pro forma sessions only with no business conducted on the following dates and times, and the following pro forma session of the Senate adjourn until the next pro forma session, Friday, February 14th, 10:30 a.m., Tuesday, February 18th, 10:30 a.m., Friday, February 21st, 10:30 a.m., and the Senate adjourned on Friday, February 21st until 2 p.m., and on Monday, February 24th, 2014. That I'm continuing my consent request. On Monday, following a prayer and a pledge, the morning hour be deemed expired. Journal proceedings be approved to date. Time for 2 leaders be reserved for use later in the day. That Senator Angus King of Maine be recognized to deliver Washington's farewell address under the previous order. That upon the conclusion of the reading, I be recognized and then the Senate be in a period of morning business until 5 p.m. with senators permitted to speak for up to 10 minutes each. At 5 p.m., the Senate proceed to executive session to consider calendar number 564, the Meyer nomination, with the time until 5:30, equally divided and controlled in the usual form, prior to a closed vote on the Meyer nomination.
Without objection.
The next roll call vote will be Monday, February 24th at 5:30 p.m. If there is further business coming before the Senate, as stated, adjourned under the previous order.
The Senate stands adjourned until Friday at 10:30 a.m.
So that wraps up today's